Okay, we'll keep with regularly scheduled programming. I'll start with the Calyptra 1.0 progress update. Then we'll have the rest of the TAC from Calyptra join us on stage for the Q&A. This is actually going to be a short presentation, very few slides. So really what we're going to, today's presentation is not about explaining what Calyptra is. It's about explaining where the project is at, right? So this is why we wanted to open with this presentation, with this slide, a growing community of a TAC, a technical advisory committee made by the 4 founding companies, AMD, Google, Microsoft, and NVIDIA. Several adopters, for example, ASpeed, earlier in the morning had material calling out specific Calyptra integration and timeline. There are others, and they're doing it on their own, as well as contributors, right? Several software, firmware, security shops are contributing to Calyptra. There are also, we don't have all the logos here. There are more contributors below this group. The technical advisory companies are committed to GA SoC chips in 2026 with Calyptra. That's probably the most important update that we wanted to give here. Of course, it's early to be talking about codes and things like that. So the community is going pretty well. The execution journey, just to sort of recap, the project was incepted in September 2021. The first time we talked about it to OCP, we had to think long and hard. It was in May 2022. March 2023 was a pretty important moment because that's when we became an open source project. We had a charter, we adopted it, we had rules and regulations, we became hosted by the Linux Foundation, and shortly thereafter we had functional bootable RTL, what we call the pre-08. By August of this year, we essentially became satisfied with the RTL as a functional RTL, not bug-free, but complete, right? The milestone at which we are today is what we call the 0.9 project milestone, not an RTL milestone, a project milestone. And here we're basically saying the metal is frozen. The RTL is very unlikely to change. We reserve the right to be wrong about it, ask forgiveness, but it's very unlikely to change, as is the ROM. The ROM is very unlikely to change. We're completing the testing coverage. We may add some glitch protection checks or something like that, but we have implemented countermeasures. We have had security reviews. You may have heard about OCP Safe. Calyptra is one of the first consumers of OCP Safe. Complete coincidence, of course. The FMC and firmware are code complete, but there's still quite a bit of work to do in terms of testing coverage and fuzzing and all of that. We have a cert. We are a CNA. We can enumerate our own CVEs. We don't plan on using that service, but we're able and equipped to do it. And we have a vulnerability management policy. In one of the presentations later today, you'll hear from Vishal and Core how we run our continuous integration checks, how we use RTL emulation using Verilator, how we run a little FPGA farm, the overall health of our project. We're trending to call a project 1.0 completion, which is when we would publish the 1.0 specification at OCP and say that the firmware, as well as the rest of the artifacts, is complete by November, maybe December of this year. But I think what we can say today is that we have firm adopters for the 2026 GA timeframe, and that we have essentially frozen the metal pretty much. This is how we track things internally. It's boring. I mean, the labels are small. The point of the slide is to show you the rate of execution of the project. This is a real project. This is a real open source project with multiple contributors, and we're executing reasonably well. Red is pending tasks, green is completed tasks. This is not always a zero-sum game, because sometimes new tasks get added, but the linear projection lines match the execution and our trends to call 1.0 complete before the year runs out. Just wanted to give some stats here on the size of the community by way of issues file and pull requests merged. The RTL moves a little bit more discreetly than the firmware. The individual pull requests are pretty large, so that's why you see fewer. On the software and firmware side, which encompasses ROM, DPE, runtime firmware, FMC, you see a lot more. We have a separate repo for DPE, and we call that out. The other chart shows you the interesting things that happen when you're trying to do open source project planning across many, many companies. Your trending dates, some days change, right? So the x-axis is the time at which a date was projected, the y-axis is the projection, and sometimes you see these bumps where we realize we had a lot of work to do, or these dips where you realize where, people got the message and got to work and closed a lot of issues. The blue one has been flat because we completed 0.8 back in August. The red one is the 0.9 that we are talking to you about today, and the green one is the 1.0, which is trending just barely to meet the end of the year. So that's the context of today's presentation, right? We have said before what Calyptra is and what it is not. We wanted to show you today the state of the project, the health of the project, the nature of the project, the level of contribution. What's holding us back from calling a spec 1.0 complete is essentially editing and technical writing. I mean, as you can imagine, there's a lot of voices contributing to the specification. So, it's a little bit of a Tower of Babel, and we need technical writers to fix it, and that's what's going on. 1.0, we talked about this. We have functional first mutable code and firmware, but we haven't completed the test coverage. We haven't built countermeasures, for example, to glitching. And once we do all of that, we need to run again our security audits and our analysis. A couple of things we're very interested in, open synthesis, as we run tests on very later emulated RTL models, but essentially we rely on closed source tools and private per company flows to synthesize the RTL and to get a sense of, how many square millimeters it is, at what node process, what are the timing loops. We'd like to at least have proof that it can be synthesized with open source tools to give the community more confidence, right? That when they find the bug, they found the real bug and not a bug in their integration. The integrations are going to essentially be 1.x or 1.0.x branches, and you might begin to see them soon as those things start to flow in. And December, January, February is going to be the definition time for the 2.0 Calyptra. We have a lot of things in the back burner that we couldn't do. A lot of them have to do with improving our RISC-V core, improving our security countermeasures, improving our capabilities, becoming faster, stronger, jumping higher. And some of those have to do with architectural issues. So that definition phase is beginning now. So that is the state of the project. I'd like to invite the rest of the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, to the stage. Chou from NVIDIA, Prabhu, Jayanna from AMD, and Bryan Kelly from Microsoft. And, call to action, of course. Help us land 1.0. Help us break 0.9. We really want it broken before somebody tapes out. So help us find bugs in there. Help us pen test. Do your own security analysis. Tell us everything that's wrong. And of course, integrate Calyptra in your ASIC. There are discussion channels in Slack. The whole project is in GitHub at calyptra.io. Thank you for your time, and we're happy to take questions.
Start again. So how are you guys operating or interoperating with OCP security group? I mean, what's the overlap there?
Well, can I take it? I mean, so Calyptra was born in the OCP security group.
Right.
Out of the interactions in there and recognizing a need. The prior presentation in some ways is where Calyptra was born. This is where the architecture is going. We need that block. Let's work on it together. The development of an open source project is something that naturally fit Linux Foundation. A year ago, OCP announced that they were going all in with Linux Foundation in terms of supporting this and other projects. We have done updates back to the Calyptra, to the OCP security group. But some time ago already, we essentially established that we have our own calls, our own communication channel. Those calls are open to every Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's why I was asking, because I know there are two calls, and I'm trying to understand kind of the overlap.
But the Calyptra call is just Calyptra, right? Whereas on the security side, Jeff is running the agenda, and you have BMC requirements, SPDM, flash boot, etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question, the next generation that you guys are considering, is that where you're going to focus on flashless?
That's a very good question. I'm going to give it to one of my colleagues.
I think Calyptra was scoped as a root of trust for measurement. So that's its focus is root of trust for measurement. When we talk about the root of trust for recovery, the RT rack, that's where the flashless comes in. But 2.0 is still very much in the definition phase, and what we include in there and the scope of it. If that increases, then it may. But we'll see where the discussion on 2.0 goes. Kind of back to your earlier question too, and like Andreas was mentioning about just the Calyptra calls, when you have a project in like an implementation phase and there's kind of very verbose communication going across the community that's contributing into that project, it wouldn't really be right to just consume the OCP weekly security calls, because there's a lot of other security topics. So there is a Slack that you can join the Slack and the mailing list for Calyptra. All of that information is out on the Calyptra webpage.
Andres, you had on one of your earlier slides formal proofs. Can you elaborate on what that was?
So these are formal proof and verification of silicon, and specifically the ECC and the SHA engine, essentially all the crypto engines that we're using, which are sourced from an open source project, but we undertook with, shout out to Louis EDA, with them, we undertook the work of doing a formal proof verification. Right? It's part of eating our veggies in a way before we tape out. Going once. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention. A very exciting moment for the Calyptra group. Thanks for everyone who's contributing. Thank you.